Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Okay, I think we will start as it is a couple minutes after the hour. And I'm sure we'll have people continue to join us, but we are so happy to see you all here. Thank you so much for being here for another Wednesday gathering here at CTS. We are always excited for this opportunity to learn together, be together, um, experience new conversations and new thoughts together. So I'm very excited today that we are welcoming Reverend Dr. Greg McGonigal to share with us some from his book on interreligious chaplaincy. I'm going to do a more formal introduction of you shortly, Greg. But that is our topic of the day, and we're very happy that everyone is here. My name is Kim Schultz. I'm the Director of Interreligious Engagement and Public Projects here at CTS, at the IRI and CTS. And we invite you, if you are able, to open up your cameras so we can see people that we are in conversation. I know it's not always possible, but if it is possible, that would be great. I want to remind you of the chat. We want to use the chat for reactions, questions, thoughts that pop up. We do check it. There will be opportunity at the end of the remarks and the discussion to ask questions and to give responses. And I know that Dr. McGonigal would love that and would love to engage with us on a deeper level in terms of your own experiences. I know we have folks here who will, and questions as well around this topic. So put them in the chat or hold on to them, and we'll engage you at that point later in the hour. So we will start as we always do with a words of gathering, a centering moment to bring us together, and I'm going to invite Rachel Payden, our staff member, who is the director. What's your title now, Rachel? Uh, Pardon me.
Director of Theological Field
Of
Education.
just theological field education. I can remember if there's two there or not. So we're so happy that you are opening us up today. I'm going to pass it to you.
Thank you, Kim. Welcome, everyone. It's good to be with you today. Can you hear me okay? Okay. This is All at Once, a poem by Clint Smith. The redwoods are on fire in California. A flood submerges a neighborhood that sat quiet on the coast for 3 centuries. A child takes their first steps and tumbles into a father's arms. Two people in New Orleans fall in love under an oak tree whose branches bend like sorrow. A forest of seeds are planted in new soil. A glacier melts into the ocean and the sea climbs closer to the land. A man comes home from war and holds his son for the first time. A man is killed by a drone that thinks his jug of water is a bomb. Your best friend relapses and isn't picking up the phone. Your son's teacher calls to say he stood up for another boy in class. A country below the equator ends a 20-year civil war. A soldier across the Atlantic fires the shot that begins another. The scientists find a vaccine that will save millions of people's lives. Your mother's cancer has returned, and doctors say there's nothing else they can do. There is a funeral procession in the morning and a wedding in the afternoon. The river that gives us water to drink is the same one that might wash us away. I wonder, what is your all at once today? Why and how does it matter? Thanks to a friend sharing it, this poem has frequently been a centering and sobering topic of conversation. Reading it aloud and inviting students to write their own version of All at Once is how I began the Leadership and Ministry in Context Zoom classroom this term. The class is full of chaplains and caregivers who are Master of Divinity students completing their field education requirement in their communities. Nosaiba Mahmoud, Nosaiba, is one of those chaplains, CTS and Bayan Master of Divinity and Islamic chaplaincy students, and is going to share a slice of our classroom conversation and her own poem to close our words of gathering today. So I'll turn it over to you, Nosaiba, to share why and how does your all at once matter? And what is your all at once poem today?
Thank you, Rachel. As a chaplain, I'm trained to sit with suffering, but I'm also trained to name the systems that are manufacturing the suffering. I have to sit with both. If I forget the stories, what's happening, the systems that are causing the harm, then I'm committing injustice to the care that I'm entrusted with. That's how I take this trust. My theology and my ministry call me to show up, to name the harm that is happening, and to name those who are being harmed so that it does not go in vain. In my tradition, we speak of wajib al-waqt, the obligation of the present moment, the ethical demand of now, naming my all at once, naming my all at once keeps my eyes on what matters now. And this poem is my attempt to stay true to that demand. All at once. My friend's son and daughter got married. My classmate passed away. I started my last semester. My degree is about to be done. My son started a full-time job. He is now part-time at home. My daughter is homeschooled. She's starting college this semester. I am visiting the ICE detention for the first time as a chaplain. I am visiting a dear community mentor for the last time before he is deported. The ceasefire is announced. Palestinians are still being killed by the endless war machine of the US and Israel. Sudanese are starving. Everyone is eating Dubai chocolate. I am in a perfect storm, yet embracing it. The fallen, brittle leaves are covering my backyard. New green, lush shoots of plants are under. There is a deafening voice of injustice in the world. The birds singing in freedom, praising the Creator. The world feels suffocating. The crisp air is breathtaking. The chaplain in the ICE detention teaching detainees English. The US administration is sending them to countries where they don't speak English. A soul was killed by ICE in Minnesota. Hundreds of souls around the nation rose in solidarity, community, and belonging.
Thank you so much, Nasaiba, for sharing those beautiful and very powerful words. And Rachel, thank you to you as well. Really lovely way to start us, and impactful indeed. I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Reverend Dr. Gregory McGonigal. Dr. McGonigal is a Dean of Religious Life and University Chaplain at Emory University, where he has built a multi-faith chaplain team and designed and opened the Emory Interfaith Center. He previously developed multi-faith chaplaincy programs at Tufts, Oberlin, and UC Davis. He is a Unitarian Universalist minister and holds degrees in religious studies and divinity from Brown, Harvard, and Boston University. He has been a researcher for the Harvard Pluralism Project and is past president of the National Association of College and University Chaplains, NACUC, and currently secretary of the International Association of Chaplains in Higher Education. He has also written the book Religious Diversity and University Chaplaincy, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and Humanist Chaplaincy in Higher Education. We are very excited to hear what he has to say today, and also very excited to see chaplains and lots of students here in the room as well to engage. And I will do double duty right now and let you know that at the end of Dr. McGonigal's remarks, we're very pleased to have Suleiman Adan, who's a student, an MA Islamic theology student at Bayan with an expected graduation very soon, and an intern chaplain serving as a prison chaplain in Minnesota, doing lots of on-the-ground work chaplaincy there as well. So we look forward to what Suleiman engages us on as well. So without further ado, I will pass it to you, Dr. McGonigal. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so very much, Dr. Schultz and Dr. Payton and Sister Noseba, and later Brother Suleiman for your beautiful welcomes and wonderful reflections. It's an honor to be with all of you today. I have been following the work that CTS, Chicago Theological Seminary, has been doing in the realm of interreligious studies, and it's really exciting work that you are doing, the programs that you offer, the various partnerships that you offer with other institutions as well. It's just really exciting, and I'm so really blessed to be part of it today and also to be able to have some time to be in conversation with you, hopefully, about this topic of chaplaincy, how chaplaincy is growing and changing, taking shape in different traditions where maybe it had different forms in the past, but it has a new form now in a lot of different contexts. And I really appreciate the reflections that you shared to open the time because I think it brings us right into the work of chaplaincy, which is the work of caring for our world, really. In my case, it's students, faculty, and staff on a university campus. For some of you, it might be in a healthcare or in a prison environment, or maybe military, or preparing for a congregational work. Even our congregations today are diverse theologically. They're diverse in terms of people's backgrounds and life experiences. And so it's a little bit like chaplaincy as well, I think. So I really just look forward to talking with you a little bit about, I'll share a little bit about my book today and how I kind of got into this work. But I'm also very interested in the kind of conversations that you want to have, the questions that you want to have, ranging from, things that could be very technical. If some of you are really looking for chaplaincy jobs and you're thinking about where do I look next as I finish my degree and look, for opportunities in the field, all the way to theological questions that we can discuss or questions of pastoral theology, preparation for this work, etc. So delighted to be with you today and really looking forward to the conversation. And I also want to give thanks to my ancestors and my mentors in this work. None of us sort of comes to this, I don't think, just by ourselves. It takes a community to do that. And the work that I do really emerges from communities and collegial relationships that I've been blessed to be a part of in my career, and that I seek to try to support through my work. So I hope that we can talk about that a little bit. I also want to say that I'm grateful to my students because I feel like in the work of education, we learn as much from our students often as we seek to impart. It really is walking a path together, and the kinds of insights, the perspectives, and the new knowledge that we can create together is really exciting, and just a privilege and a blessing to be part of. I'll say just by way of background that I came into this work. Well, I'll say personally, I'm from the Boston area myself. I grew up in Boston. With a name like McGonigal, you might assume that I come from an Irish Catholic background, which is my first language and faith. Grew up in a very devout Roman Catholic family. And the two things that were really very important to our family growing up were faith and education. Those were the deep values that my parents had, and I have a sister as well. And they shaped a lot of what was important in our family life. And I think they shaped my life as, when I was younger, getting involved in church and also just feeling a deep spiritual sense of myself and wanting to engage more deeply with the sacred, with the holy, how that, however that would manifest in my life. It caused me to go to a Catholic high school. I'd gone to public school before that. And there I really began to study religion more formally. And as may have happened with some of you in studying religion, a lot of questions came from doing that and maybe more questions than answers. But it sent me on a kind of a personal pilgrimage with my own faith. At the same time, I was reading the transcendentalist authors in American literature. I became really interested in the ways that they encourage the idea of a direct relationship with the holy and also experiencing the divine in nature. And I decided when I went on to college that I wanted to study religion, but on an even broader landscape than I had sort of growing up. And so I began to study at first Judaism and then Islam. And then I took a course as an undergrad on Indian religions with a professor who was just absolutely charismatic and really opened up a whole world that I had never known about the holy before. And at the same time, personally, my faith was developing. I ended up finding Unitarian Universalism as a faith home. At first, it didn't really feel like home. It felt quite different from the ritual environment, the liturgical environment that I had grown up in. Theologically, though, and ethically, it really felt right for me. But I do see myself as kind of a hybrid or a person who has multiple religious belonging. And so we could talk about that too, because actually on campus, something like 30% of our students today claim multiple religious traditions, which is something that I think growing up like would not have computed to my parents necessarily. It's either you're this or you're that. But the reality is, many people come from interfaith families or their own journeys have, led us to have a hybrid faith identity. And that's a question for chaplains too. How do we really serve people who, may feel a deep connection to more than one tradition? Um, so to make a long story short, the other thing that was going on in college was I was starting to notice that I went to Brown for undergrad, and Brown was becoming much more religiously diverse than it had been in the past. It was founded, as people might know, by the Baptist tradition. But one of the things about Brown was that they always wanted to be ecumenical. So unlike some schools that were, they had an affiliation but were limited to that, they had an ecumenical board of trustees. They believed in teaching multiple denominations anyway of Christianity. Eventually, a significant Jewish community developed at Brown. But by the time I was there in just about the year 2000, started to really be a significant Muslim community, very large South Asian community. There were Buddhist practitioners. There were some professors in religion who not only taught religion, but encouraged their students to meditate as well. And so there was this religious diversity, but people were not really coming together for conversation with one another in an interfaith way. And so I had a diverse group of friends from different religious and philosophical backgrounds. And we said, why don't we, we're all interested in religion personally, and some of us studying religion. Why don't we get together and form an interfaith council? And Brown hadn't had that before, and we didn't know what we were doing. But we came together. We started to have meetings to learn about interreligious dialogue. Our chaplain there at Brown, who's one of my mentors, Janet Cooper Nelson, took us on a retreat. She really supported us, and that was very formative for me, both intellectually and then in my own faith as well. And so I thought I was going to go on to divinity school and do a PhD at first. I was very interested in Indian religions. I had studied abroad in India and studied Sanskrit and so forth. That was my focus. But the other thing that happened when I was studying abroad was that I realized that what I had been studying about religion did not necessarily map onto what I was experiencing when I went into religious spaces. So I knew a lot of the history of Indian religions. I was studying the scriptures, but I didn't know what people were doing when they went into a temple. I didn't know what the rituals were that they marked their lives by, and that really created a disconnect for me. So I was going on to divinity school, and the other thing that was happening was this was around the time that Diana Eck at Harvard was doing the work of the Pluralism Project, kind of researching the growing religious diversity in the United States. And there was an ethical component to that as well, because as newer faith communities emerged across the US, they were not always welcomed. In some places they were, but there was often prejudice, stereotype, lack of knowledge. And part of her mission and the Pluralism Project's mission was to create greater literacy and understanding across religious lines. So that actually caused some friends of mine and I to do a course in my last semester, I think, at Brown on lived religion in America. How is religion actually lived, and what does it look like in a sort of diverse context, which is something that there had been no courses on. So by the time I got to divinity school, all these things were coming together, and I discerned that really the path for me wasn't going to be a PhD, becoming a professor and doing the tenure track and all the publications and so forth. But I really cared not only about religion, but about human community and about issues of social justice. And I realized that my college chaplain had a job in which she could do all those things. And I eventually discerned a call to college chaplaincy myself. I focused my divinity studies on that, and then I was blessed to do first an internship at a congregation that did a lot of campus ministry, a Unitarian congregation in California. Then I was hired by a liberal Protestant campus ministry that was wanting to do more multi-faith work. And then eventually have taken some successive positions as university chaplains. I was hired as the first multi-faith director of religious life at Oberlin to sort of build a more multi-faith program than they had, reflecting the diversity that was growing in their student and faculty community. When I went to Tufts has a Universalist heritage, already had more religious diversity in the chaplaincy, but we actually extended it further. We appointed the first humanist chaplain to be employed by a university in the country. And we added a Buddhist chaplain, which there are not many actually Buddhist chaplains that are hired by universities, even still. And then eventually, by the time that I left, a Hindu chaplain position as well. Then to bring us to the present day, I ended up at Emory 7 years ago. And I was really called to Emory to help to build a multi-religious team. Just like the other institutions that I've mentioned, and just like the landscape of our country, the student community at Emory had become much more religiously diverse. There was a desire for interreligious and interfaith engagement. There were needs that were emerging from the community, and there were things that were happening in the world that prompted the university to say, we need to do better by our students and faculty and staff, and we need to have more support for more traditions on our campus, and we want to encourage them to be in dialogue. Some of my predecessors at Emory had done some wonderful work laying foundations for that. But we hadn't taken the step of having chaplains of multiple traditions. We did not have an interfaith center, although there was a hope to do that. And so thankfully, it was an environment that was very welcoming of that work. And it's been a real blessing to be part of collaboratively building that at Emory. So just to say a brief word about this book that I've written, and thank you so much for dropping it in the chat, and happy to talk more about it. I won't take you through the whole book today, but the reason why I wrote it was really to help institutions like the ones that I've been working at to think about how they could expand their spiritual life offerings in a more multi-religious way. Where would they look for people to step into chaplain roles if they had those roles? What would the chaplains do? What kind of preparation did they need to have? what are the challenges that they've faced, and what are the future opportunities that would be presented by having a more multi-religious spiritual life. And there wasn't really a book that existed that was like that. There have been, and some of you who are familiar with the literature would know that in the past number of years, there are some edited volumes, a beautiful one called Mantle of Mercy that, and I have some colleagues who have contributed to that about Muslim chaplaincy. There is now a new Buddhist campus chaplaincy source book, which is the great volume, and our Buddhist chaplain at Emory has a chapter in there as well. So there are some edited volumes, but in terms of a book that a president or a dean or a provost or someone responsible for the campus life of a university could pick up and say, okay, how can we create a more multi-religious environment here? How can we support religious diversity and interfaith engagement? There wasn't that book. And so what I did was I was blessed to have many friends who were doing that work of chaplaincy in these different traditions that I wrote about. And so I interviewed them and I asked them those questions. How did you come into this work? What's the history of it? What did you feel you needed to do to prepare? What have you learned along the way? How has your program taken shape? And I sought to try to describe that in a way that would be useful to institutions that are trying to walk this path. Um, and it's interesting. So, and we can talk about it. There are multiple faith traditions that are in this text, a chapter on each. Of course, each of these traditions is ancient and vast and diverse. There's a lot that could be said about them. But at the same time, many institutions are pluralizing in ways that really have some representation of all of these traditions together. And so I wanted to be able to have a text that would talk about the development of chaplaincy in these traditions sort of in parallel, and be able to see that there are some similarities in the development of and the shape of the programs, for instance, and there are important differences as well, and nuances that need to be discussed, and that comes out in the course of the book if you have a chance to look at it. I will say that I've been delighted. It is being used, actually, which an author always loves when that happens. So there are universities that have been looking for chaplains that have their search committees have used the book and been able to think about what they're looking for in their chaplain candidates, how they might design a program. There are chaplaincy courses that have been using the book to think about, okay, this describes chaplaincy in these traditions. How is it innovating? How is it changing? And so forth. So I'm very hopeful that it will have a positive influence on our field to create greater inclusion around the religious traditions that I write about in the book. And it's been helpful to me, I will just say as well, as someone who's a dean and leads a multi-religious team, to be able to gather the insights of colleagues doing this work across the country, various different types of institutions, various backgrounds that they had that brought them into this work. It's been very helpful for us, even at Emory, thinking about what our vision is for the work that we're doing with students, faculty, and staff today. So I hope that provides a little bit of a background of sort of what I cover in this book, what I was hoping to do, and even a bit about some of the material that I get into on chaplaincy and these traditions. As I say, there wasn't even much historically written about the development of say, Hindu college chaplaincy. Often, what I had to piece together were news articles that came from, oh, Princeton has appointed a Hindu chaplain or Georgetown has done so. But in terms of actually putting together a timeline of what this has looked like, how it's taken shape. Many people may be interested to know that the first really multi-religious program developed at Wellesley College in Massachusetts, the great women's college, in 1993, when their visionary president, Diana Chapman Walsh, decided that they really needed to have a much more global, much more multi-religious program than they had. And their chaplain at the time built that out, and it continues to be a multi-faith program there today. So that was one of the examples that is discussed in the book that was a forerunner to how this looks now on many campuses. One just last thing I'll say about this is that the higher education landscape is very diverse. So ranges from very large public institutions where we know tens of thousands of students attend, all the way to a school like Oberlin, where I worked. That's the College and Conservatory of Music with 2,500 students. And there are even smaller institutions. There are faith-based, there are public and private, religiously affiliated, like we are at Emory with the Methodist Church. And so this work looks different at different institutions. And a colleague of mine at Emory has now written a book looking at public institutions and how they are navigating religious change and increased desire to do interfaith work at a public institution where there's a real framework of the separation of church and state, and a sense that, should the institution really even be supporting religious life at all? Or is that something that they should stay away from? And nevertheless, religious groups and communities are some of the most vibrant communities on their campuses. And so eventually someone has to be supporting that work on campus. And so that's another avenue. At smaller schools, as I say, often like Oberlin, where I worked, it was really a campus community relationship. So it wasn't that Oberlin could have a multiplicity of chaplains really serving these traditions, but we had faculty advisors, we had strong student leaders, and then we had masjids and mandirs and monasteries in the community that we were able to partner with and work with. There are some limitations to that, but also that's what's realistic for some of the institutions as well. So some people would look at it and say, "Wow, it's great the program that you have at Emory, but we're much smaller, or we don't have those resources. Is it possible for us to do this?" And I would say yes. There are many, very creative colleagues across the country doing that work, and it does require some creativity. And I will say that from my perspective, this is also really a growing field. Some people are saying, well, there are changes in the mainline denominations, and what's going on with religion and religious belonging and the SBNR and so forth. What I see as I look across the country is that college university chaplaincy is actually in a growth phase, especially after the past couple of years when there have been so many dynamics on campus of conflict that are maybe not necessarily religious conflict, but that have connections to religious communities where communities have been feeling maybe not supported. And so some institutions are waking up to really needing to do more of that work. And so we've seen positions expand at many universities where they haven't been before. So, for those of you who are looking to get into this work, especially at universities, I can say that I think that it's an optimistic time for that. There's also some really interesting research as we think about the political divisions that are so present in society, and even thinking about our opening reflections, some of the things that we're all seeing in the world, in the news, in our country, and concerned about. There's some research that says that even across political lines, there is an understanding and appreciation for spiritual life in higher education. That both conservative and liberal faculty, for instance, think that an institution should care for the spiritual lives of their students, which is interesting because that's not the case for other areas of university endeavor, some of which have been our close partners in this work. So I think I will just pause there. Hopefully, there's something in there that maybe caught your attention. But I would welcome certainly, Suleiman, your reflections, questions, and then would love to have a conversation with all of you. So thank you so much for letting me share.
Thank you, Reverend. Thank you for your work and for being here. I learned a great deal, and I look forward to purchasing your book as well. Um, before I name the question that I had coming in, but also now that hearing you speak, I want to name that I come into this conversation as an abolitionist, which is kind of oxymoronic given that I work at that I intern at a maximum security prison as a chaplain. But it's also fueled by my work as a civil rights activist, as the deputy executive director at the Council on American and Islamic Relations. I also want to name that most of the people I sit with, they don't meet spiritual care in classrooms or student centers, and I'm sure that you and the other chaplains on the call can can also understand that, they meet it in cells and in courtrooms and hospital rooms and unfortunately detention holding spaces. And just like Noseba started this call today of, reflecting on those that she's had to meet in those detention spaces. And I say had to because it shouldn't have happened in the first place. I carry with me the names and the faces of people who did not make it out of those systems alive. And that memory shapes every question that I ask. Um, the question that I have is, your book looks at how universities bring in chaplains from Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, and humanist traditions. I find that really beautiful, and I find that it's a true reflection of the full human experience. Um, when an institution says it offers spiritual care, what does that mean in practice for the people who are most at risk inside that system? Who is protected and who would you say is more exposed or still exposed, I should say?
Wow, thank you so much, Suleiman. And I really appreciate the positionality that you shared and the commitments that you hold and the work that you're doing. It couldn't be more important in my view. And certainly coming from the context where I am in Georgia, where I think we have the most incarcerated people in any state in the country, it's a very pressing issue. It's something that my colleagues and our students and I are deeply concerned about. We do some chaplaincy programs connected with some of the prisons in Georgia, and then we have some student organizations that work with youth who are in youth detention. But it is a great question, and I think it's something that every citizen, certainly in this country, or person living in this country, has an obligation to learn more about and to have some role in creating change and creating a better environment, bringing the justice that the justice system is intended to advance. And I really appreciate your sort of centering the needs of the most marginalized. Part of the work that I've been seeking to do, through this multi-religious chaplaincy that I've been doing, is work of allyship, drawing close to communities that I noticed had been historically marginalized, underrepresented, underserved, that I think a lot of institutions haven't really seen. Some communities have been very effective in advocating for their needs, especially in maybe the past 10, 20 years. Other communities, it may not be natural to them to even do that kind of advocacy. And nevertheless, there are needs there. So I think there's a role for allies. As we look at the campus landscape, some of those who are experiencing the most suffering are those that are either coming to us or developing in their time with us mental health issues. There are
Yeah.
serious issues also of food insecurity, uh, across campus. Um, racism, homophobia, transphobia, all the ism, sexism, and certainly those persistent things. And in our work, we do seek to make it justice centered and to really bring the connections between faith and justice to the fore. I think it's one of the beautiful things about university chaplaincy is that at least the congregations that I grew up in, it wasn't often about social justice. There was charity that was done, wonderful, really important charitable work. There was service work that was done, but it wasn't always about transforming systems in the way that I think you're naming here. And I think that's a responsibility, frankly, especially in higher education, that we're thinking about not just, gaining knowledge, but learning in a way that builds our awareness of what's really going on in society, and that if we have the privilege of education, that we can take some action, some positive action to do. So I really appreciate what you're saying, and I think at least from the university point of view, I would love to see more partnership between universities and communities addressing some of the issues that you're naming. I think there's a great opportunity to do that. I also think that students have a lot of passion for doing that. And then I think that faculty and older folks on campus maybe have wisdom and resources that they can contribute to some of that work too. So I sort of speak from my context, but very much appreciate what you're centering here.
I appreciate, uh, I wish my university had a chaplain. They do now. I mean, my undergraduate university had a chaplain.
Yeah.
They do now. And I think to myself, like, um, how much stronger my faith would I've been while in undergrad, but also, what how would I have experienced faith, both like big F faith, like faith in like religion, like me and the divine, but also faith in like the smaller part of the I don't lowercase f, like having faith in something greater than I. Um, and a question related to that is, when students arrive with a fractured relationship to faith because of family pressure, trauma, or even like public hostility towards their religion. Like, I'm thinking like anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and so on. What have chaplains seen help restore faith, or sorry, help restore trust in faith again? Is it the presence in community, or sorry, is it the presence of the chaplains there? Is it the community that the chaplains help build? Um, or is it something else?
It's a great point. Certainly, I sometimes say that like the students who come to us, we sometimes we get the really devout, students who show up, they've had a great relationship with their tradition. It means a lot. They're ready, they're engaged. We have people who are seeking. They don't know. In fact, more and more of our students don't come from a religious background. Over 50% maybe don't claim a religious background, but many are curious. So they're interested. What is that big F faith that some people have and I didn't grow up with, but I'm curious about. Then we have skeptics, people who've had really challenging, negative, hurtful relationships with traditions, maybe, or see the violence that's done in the world in the name of different faith traditions, and just say, how can that be? The values are this, but this is what I see, in practice in the world.
Mhm.
I do think that chaplains have a wonderful opportunity, hopefully, to walk alongside people with that, to sit with people who are wrestling with that, and hopefully to help them to maybe find a way in faith traditions to experience something that they may have not seen before, a different side of it. I personally think that a lot of people's religious education ends way too early. I think my formal religious education ended when I was, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, something like that. I was confirmed, in these traditions, sometimes they say they, have a confirmation ritual and they say, you're an adult, and it's like, wow, I haven't even really experienced anything yet. But I'm an adult in the faith community. But so I think that there's an educational part. I think there's a pastoral part to play. I think there's the opportunity for creativity. Sometimes people, grow up maybe in one congregation, they've only seen faith done one way, and they don't know that there's a whole universe out there of different practices. There are mystical practices. There are, musical aspects, artistic parts of it. And so I think one of the exciting things that chaplain can do, hopefully, is to open up some of the diversity of that. But definitely what you name is absolutely true. People have had hurt relationships, and a lot of what people see in the media is not positive about faith traditions. And so I think the chaplains and spiritual leaders have have our work cut out for us in some ways in really expressing why is it that these traditions are meaningful to us. Also, what's the justice that's been done in the name of these traditions? How have they been resources for creating positive change in the world, for bringing to get people together around values? So that's another part of the story that I think can get lifted up.
That's really powerful. And you named something that I've here in Minneapolis, something that we've been speaking about, especially with the current militarization of our city, is being a witness. And like just hearing you, I'm sensing that like chaplains are witnesses, and not just like managers or coordinators or people or students in this case. And like when a student is struggling spiritually, what distinguishes a chaplain who helps restore faith from an institution, uh, 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 that simply offers programming. Yeah.
Yeah.
What does real like spiritual accompaniment look like in those moments?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think that, and some people will say, well, wait a minute, we have therapists, we have mental health, departments and so forth. Why do we need a chaplain? Isn't it all the same? And of course, the work of psychological services is extremely important. I make use of it myself. It's, we refer and we recommend. But I do think chaplains often the way therapy happens, not always, but it's often in a one-to-one relationship. And I think that chaplains are primarily, in my view, about building community. I think you used the word community as well. And that's, I think, the difference that a chaplain can build, because we're seeking to build caring community. We're seeking to connect people with others. People often say, well, you're a chaplain. It's probably like a hospital chaplain. You see patients all day and one-to-one people come in. Most of our work is not like that. It's mostly about building, shaping, creating space that's welcoming and inviting, creating space where people see something of themselves and their culture, so that they feel, oh, wait a minute, I'm at home here. I can connect with people here. And I think that is part of the healing work, of healing the brokenness and the separation and the alienation and the loneliness that a lot of people feel today. And I think chaplains can do tremendous work of healing by helping to build those communities, both within like faith communities, but also the interfaith. Because sometimes I think people find their people with people of different traditions. Maybe it wasn't, maybe your faith may be important to you, but that doesn't have to be the only community that you're part of either. We find, actually, it's really heartening to me at Emory. We have more and more students asking every week to join our interfaith programs. And it's like, wow, that's really interesting. But I think people are craving that kind of relationship. We have another chaplain on our team, our Jewish chaplain actually, who runs a program that's mostly about helping students learn how to have conversations with each other. Because so many of us, we do spend our lives mediated by screens now. And we've forgotten in some cases how to get to know one another, how to disagree with one another, how to find things that we're passionate about together. And so we have a group of like 40 students who just takes other students out for coffee, and
Love it.
are friends with them. So I
Love
think
that.
that's part of the work that we can do that maybe others aren't doing.
I love that. I love that. Really, really centered in that, it's like interfaith on purpose, right? It's like an
Yes.
interfaith community on purpose. I love it. And I do have one last question before, we turn it to other folks. I know that, Kim has invited others to join, but, if a university truly wants to be a place where students' faith can be restored, not just faith in like in the divine, but or in God, but like faith in something greater than themselves, or strengthened. Uh, like, what would you say? What would you advise that those universities should provide beyond like symbolic inclusion?
Well, that's a big question. I'd be curious for your thoughts on that. I bet that you have some pretty good ideas on that. Um, I do think that people are look to institutions to set a tone at the very least, or to embody values that they care about. Sometimes that's challenging. We have really diverse communities. People come from different perspectives politically, religiously, racially, other identities, the ways we look at the world. And that's a challenge for universities to hold together, but it's also a wonderful opportunity, right? We have this great diversity together. Can we learn to find faith? Can we learn to
Mm,
find hope? Can we learn to find a common purpose with one another? There may be things that we agree on that we can work together on. There might be things that we don't. But can we do some of that work of like healing our society, bringing people back together, and recalling us to some of the values that we say that we espouse? Um, that would be my hope. And I do think that's happening, and I think people want that to happen. We have a president of Emory wrote a little book called The Education of the Heart. And what he said,
mm,
President Laney, he says, university needs to be about professional studies, and it needs to be about, deep research and all those things. But there's also a heart dimension to what we're doing here. We need to be thinking about our values, our ethics, And I think restoring a sense of hope and faith in that broader sense of like, okay, we can build the kind of beloved community that we hope to have. That would be my hope.
Thank you. It's really been a pleasure being. I could,
I would
digress
talk to
forever,
you.
and
We
I could
talk
go
together all day,
on.
sir. Yes.
Yes.
Let's stay connected. I would love that. But if,
Yeah,
yeah,
for
certainly if
sure.
anyone else has a thought or a question, I would welcome that as well. I know we have a few more minutes left.
Yeah, if anyone wants to unmute themselves or raise your hands if you want to ask a question, or you can put it in the chat, I think. Leo, have you unmuted yourself intentionally?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, Dean McGonigal. It was great to see you and to listen to you tonight. I'm in my second semester of Master of Divinity program at Candler School of Theology, and I am currently working at Metro Regional Youth Detention Center as a chaplain intern. And I identify my work and calling as non-religious or humanist chaplain. See, and my ethical or theological or non-theological identity is based on Marxist view. So like economic liberation and class consciousness is very important to me. And as an Asian person, I am from South Korea. I am not Asian American, but a Korean person. And like so like the post-colonial discourses about this is also very important. But because I sometimes as working with my colleagues or working as a chaplain, when I um, tell people that I am non-religious, people kind of get really curious about this and at the same time very confused about this. People ask me like, if you don't have faith, how can you do chaplaincy work? Or I've even like heard some people just downright said to me to my face that you have to go into like social work rather than chaplaincy. But I also feel like even though like Marxist view is very much based on atheist view of the world and of faith and belief, I still believe spiritual care is very much needed, especially in social movement setting, because spiritual care is yes, there those places are sometimes like places where spiritual care is the most needed in our society. So I just wanted to ask you for advices or your thoughts about this, just to help me. I just wanted to ask you to help me out in those kind of discourses and what's your thought about this, and especially because when we're talking about interfaith um, chaplaincy setting, sometimes you have to be with people who have a very different point of view or very different religions, and talking about your faith in a way can be some people can think of that as being denied their faith or their religion or their tradition. So how do you navigate those situations or those kind of conversations?
Those are great questions. And first, let me just say thank you for the work that you're doing. It sounds very powerful to me, and I'm so glad you're doing it. Whoever thinks that you should do something else, I disagree.
Thank
I'm so
you.
glad you're doing what you're doing, and I hope you continue on that path. We need humanist chaplains. We need non-religious, religious. We need all the chaplains, and definitely in social movements, we need chaplains because people are up against, tremendous suffering, tremendous injustice, and they need people walking with them and caring for them so that they can have the resilience to continue to do the work. So I think that's so beautiful that you do that. But chaplaincy is misunderstood, I will say, by a lot of people. It's part of the reason why I wrote this book, and why I do write with humility about traditions that are not my own, because there are just there's such a lack of understanding in a lot of places, and I would say maybe especially around humanism. Some people are comfortable to say, okay, these different religions, but wait a minute, you're talking about humanism now. You're not a theist. They forget that many Buddhists are also not theists, and even members of other traditions. So there's an educational piece. And the only advice that I would give is, and you're probably doing this already, but to find community for yourself where you can get support and be in dialogue with others. I have some great colleagues who are humanist chaplains, There are many actually doing that work in Europe, which people know is, at least numerically, maybe a lot more secular than here. And so there's maybe a longer history of the humanist chaplaincy in some places. There's a great new book that doesn't have humanist chaplaincy in the name, but it's like pluralistic chaplaincy. It's from Routledge. And you might look at that because it's about humanist chaplaincy. And so there's starting to be more resources. But I'm actually curious about the book that you will write based on your experiences and what you'll teach us about this field that is the cutting edge. I mean, I went to divinity school at a time when humanism was not taught. So I couldn't take a course really on. I could take philosophy maybe or Marxism. There was a lot of, we read a lot of Marx in my undergraduate studies, I will say, and that's important. And it's in liberation theology. It's in many places, right? But but I think yes, and I see in the chat Vanessa Gomez Brake, who's one of the chaplains I talk with in my book, is a wonderful interlocutor and someone who's connected with CTS, I believe too. So yeah, great question, great questions, and keep doing the work that you're doing, and
Thank
let me know
you.
if I can help. By the way, any of you, if there's something that is more like a personal question or something that you want to follow up on, you can easily find me on the Emory website. If you just, I have an unusual name, so if you put Gregory McGonigal in there, it will pop up probably. And I'm happy to talk with you about your own vocational path or other resources or any way that I can be supportive to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And there's been a few comments in the chat you must want to take a look at, Greg.
Thanks.
President Brad Braxton is with us, and he's going to close us out in just a moment. But I just wanted to open it up if there was somebody else who had one last burning question that we could address quickly. Um, I feel like maybe Ms. Collins might have something that she wishes
Yeah,
to say.
not a question, but thank you so much, Dean McGonigal, and also Leo, about the way in which you show up, right, in your perspective areas. I am over student services, and part of my job is chaplain, pastoral care, and counseling.
Yes.
And it feels so good that schools, universities, and colleges, right, are now accepting and understanding it's a great need. And also the fact that leading with spirituality, because I'm a person who believes that we all are spiritual beings, regardless to whether identify. And just getting that confusion out, because when you do state whatever your faith tradition is, folks get like confused or kind of standoffish because they feel like you're already in a box and you're not going to be able to relate to them or genuinely, journey with them. So I'm just sitting here like, yeah, yes.
I see
And
your
Well,
head.
thank
I'm
you.
definitely, yeah, you saw me, Kim, like, yeah,
I saw you, and I was so
yeah,
grateful to see you. I'm like,
yes,
okay, all right,
yes,
maybe,
yes.
maybe we're on
So,
the right path somewhere here. But you bring
yes,
up a great
exactly.
point too, which is
Mhm.
that some people are doing chaplain work without the title.
Yes.
An institution may not have that title. They may be public. Talking about prison systems or other institutions, or even in higher ed, people don't have that title, but they're doing that work and they're bringing that sense of faith, hope, trust, spirituality, the deep values, a deeper sense of meaning. They're bringing that peace to the work that they're seeking to do. So thank you for the work that you do. And I think that's a great dimension to go into as well. How can this be woven in? Maybe, there might not be the chaplain title, but are there ways to bring this into different spaces through other titles and ways? So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for that addition, Deneen.
Yeah, and I'll
Anything else?
definitely be in touch because you guys are doing some wonderful things, and I just want to hear more about it.
I love it. Well,
Okay.
and I lead a team. I have to say, I mean, just props to them. I mean, we have the most wonderful chaplain team as well. And I
Mhm.
know that any of them would be willing to talk with you as well. We love the work that we do. We're passionate about it. It's been the blessing of my life, honestly, to be able to do the work that I do, and to
Yes.
try to open up pathways for others to do it.
Yes,
And so, yes, so please be in touch.
definitely. Thank you.
And I know folks are dropping off as they need to. I do want to come close to honoring time, but I do see a couple hands. If we just have a moment, Nosaiba, I did see you first. And if you wanted to unmute yourself, if everyone is okay with that, and apologies, Dr. Braxton, and hopefully if you are okay, Dr. McGonigal, we will not keep you too much longer.
I'm here for you. No, I'm
Okay.
glad if you have time. Yes.
Thank you. I have a question regarding um, university chaplaincy in the time that we witnessed the genocide and the rise of encampments on campuses and pro-Palestine actions. And how did you, as a chaplain, balance the advocacy for the students, the tension that is usually from the administration, the pressure from that, and the care for those who need that care?
Well, thank you. Thank you for a very good and a very hard question. I think that what we try to do is really center care, center the immediate care for the communities that are hurting and the people that are hurting. And people hurt to different degrees. For some, it's family members, or, for some, it's larger faith family, and for others, it's issues of conscience and so forth. So I think drawing close and centering that care is probably the most important work that chaplains can do. The other piece is like there are others in the university that have to do their parts as well. And the chaplain can't do everything. But I think centering the care, I also think the chaplains can be great persons for students and others to think things out with in terms of maybe the justice work that they want to do or how to get involved in communities in ways that are important to them. So I see that work happening. Um, and sometimes it's advocacy in the institution. And one thing I will say is it doesn't always look like necessarily being the one to speak at a rally. It absolutely can. But there's often work that can be done behind the scenes as well in creating resources, in making sure that people have what they need, that people are safe, and so forth. That I think I have experienced is at least as important. But it also, but we need the partnerships. We need other organizations and other individuals to also do their part. So thank you so much. Mhm.
Oh, sorry, wrong button was off. Samra, do you want
Samra,
to
Sister
offer our last question?
Yes, Dr. McGonigal, I just need to um, appreciate and say thank you. It was a chance meeting with your first Hindu chaplain, Brahmachari, at the One America movement in Atlanta, Georgia, that I had gone to visit. And it was through my program that I had done for on spiritual entrepreneurship through Columbia Business School. And it was my meeting with her and sitting with her that prompted me to apply for MDiv and pursue chaplaincy. So I just wanted to just raise that and just recognize that as well.
Mashallah. That's great. I'm so happy that you did. So happy you met her. She is an amazing chaplain.
She
And
is,
I
she
think
is.
I think we were the first place that she was like officially a chaplain. She had done spiritual
Yes,
life work
yes.
before, and she's continued at Georgetown now. But how wonderful. And I mean, I think that speaks to the interreligious aspect of this too. We have our own faiths, but there's also something in chaplaincy that's a shared posture of caring and compassion that that can inspire others. So how beautiful. I'm so glad. And
Yeah,
good luck to you in that. God
thank
bless
you.
you. Mhm.
Thank you so much for that. I am going to pass it off to President Braxton. I just want to say my own personal thanks, Greg, Dr. McGonigal, for being here and for opening up this conversation. I know we don't have anywhere near enough time to dive as deep as we want to, but I think this is very useful for our community, and we hope that this is just the beginning. Thank you, Suleiman, for being here and engaging and bringing your powerful questions and dialogue to the forefront. And I love this gang here to the end. Way to be strong here after the 6 o'clock hour, President Braxton.
Thank you, Kim. Dean McGonigal, you honor us by your presence. What a delight it has been to be with you. And I begin my closing comments by also sharing, of course, that I am a proud alumnus of Emory University and the Graduate Department of Religion. And so I feel that kinship and connection with you as well, and also count President Laney as one of my mentors from afar, and the book about him and the moral presidency and all that you summoned in that moment as well touched me very deeply. You have shown us so powerfully that interreligious chaplaincy is not just a profession, it is a posture. It's about a willingness to listen at the crossroads of many traditions and to do it with humility and courage. Thank you for modeling that for us tonight. And you have helped us afresh at CTS to realize that we, in our own way, are chaplains in this moment as we stand in the gap in a world that is hurting so severely, but in a world that can be transformed through radically inclusive love. We look forward to developing our kinship with you, and you go with our blessings. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President. Really, really appreciate that blessing and those words. Thank you. Go Eagles as well. I'm glad to have you. Glad to have you in the family.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next month, if not sooner.
Thank you all so much again.
Thank you.